Happy Thanksgiving from our central complex to yours. Chapter 17. Breakout. As the Tyrannosaur went after the LC-130. In Berlin, Troy turned to Kelly. Now! He started jogging down the runway, away from the central complex, out towards the mountains of the peninsula. The mixed-breed wolf trotted at his side. Kelly straggled behind, bringing up the rear. Troy, wait up! We have to run for it. I can't run that fast! He slowed down the pace, backpack bouncing in its frame. Besides, she said, coming alongside him, panting for breath, won't we attract attention if we run? They'll think we're just trying to escape from the T-Rex. Slow down, god damn it! He cut it back to a fast walk. She adjusted her backpack, glancing at the LC-130 as it attempted to take off. Don't waste time looking back, Troy said. We'll hear T-Rex if he comes after us. Look! What is he doing to the plane? Probably the same thing he did to the other one. He seems to hate planes, or maybe he just likes to play with them. He could get killed! Good, then we only have Tarosh to worry about. Hey! I care what happens to that T-Rex, and not just because I raised him. He's still the most important scientific experiment, an experiment totally out of control, Kelly. You're going to have to write him off. You never did like him. No, to be honest, I never did. They passed a group running back to the central complex. Troy! One of them called. You're going the wrong way! Troy said nothing, and the other man kept running. They'll think we're up to something, Kelly said. They don't have time to think. Troy! Another voice called from further down the runway. Don't look back, he warned Kelly. Sounds like this one's serious. Pretend you don't hear him. Troy! The voice called again, more urgently this time. They kept walking. The explosion of the LC-130 made them turn around. As they looked at the cargo transport in flames against the pale night, they saw someone hobbling down the runway after them, his crutch slipping the ice over surface. It's Jack, Kelly said. She saw the hesitation in Troy's eyes. We are going to wait for him, aren't we? She asked. He hesitated a few seconds longer. Then said, sure. But as he said it, he looked out at the distant, ice-covered mountain of the peninsula. Saw you guys leaving, Jack said, catching up with them, laboring for breath. Which way are you headed? The Russian base. Vladivostok Station. That's what I thought. Straight up over the mountains. The only way to go. Silence fell over them, punctuated by the distant scream of frightened men and the roars of the Tyrannosaur. Let me go with you, Troy. Kelly looked at Troy. He said nothing. It's all over for me here, man. If I stay, I'm dead too. Troy remained silent. I know what you're thinking. It's the leg, isn't it? But I can still pull my own weight. Maybe I can't handle a backpack too good, but I can help with the camp work, and nobody knows the Antarctica terrain better than me. I know that, Jack. He tried not to look at the amputated leg. Come on, Troy, please. Troy took a deep breath, then let it out slowly. I won't slow you guys down, honest. And even in that deep snow or on ice, this crutch won't hold me back that much. I can always use it. Okay, Jack. He stopped. Huh? I said, okay, you're coming with us. Thanks, man. Thanks a lot. Kelly touched Troy's arm. He turned to her. She smiled at him. A real smile. Guess there's no time to load my pack, Jack said. You can share mine, Troy offered. I packed heavy. You sure? Yeah, but let's get out of here. We want to make as much headway as possible while Tarosh still has his hands full. They started down the runway, Wolf alongside them. Jack struggled hard to keep up and almost managed to match their pace, even though Kelly could see that Troy was deliberately keeping it slow. Stop! A distant voice called. Jack started to look back. Don't, Troy said. Just keep going. Halt! The voice ordered. Darrow, Sawyer, Rains. Sounds like one of Tarosh's boys, Jack said. Keep walking, Troy said. He heard the hissing in the air then, as it passed close to him, followed by a heavy echo of the gunshot, rolling like a clap of thunder across the runway. Troy turned around this time. So did the other two. Berlin stood several hundred yards away, the 460 Weatherby in his hands, aimed straight at them. As Tarosh watched the LC-130 crash and burn into flames, and with it his last hope of transporting the Tyrannosaur, his frustration became visible. "No," he said, drawing his Makarov in a reflex gesture, holding it impotently at his side. "No!" Belin walked up to him, still breathing hard from the close call with the Tyrannosaur, his face scraped and bleeding where he had cut it, dropping from the plane ski. He had retrieved the 460 Weatherby and held it in the crook of one arm, barrel pointing out. He looked at the Tyrannosaur, roaring in triumph above the burning wreckage of the LC-130. "He has more lives than a cat." "Yes, Vladimir," Tarosh said, "especially when we made the mistake of trying to kill the cat with useless weapons. This rifle, and then compound that mistake by hiding behind valuable cargo transport in an attempt to save our own wretched lives. I had no choice." Tarosh struck him with the Makarov and sent him sprawling onto the ice-covered runway. The 460 dropped from Belin's hand, clattering on the ice. "You were a fool," Tarosh said, voice barely under control. "You have destroyed our last possible hope of realizing any profit from this creature. You will be dealt with later." "Sir," Proskov said. Tarosh turned to him, face rigid with fury. "What, Dmitri? They are escaping." He pointed to Troy, Kelly, and Jack in the distance, the dog beside them as they fled down the runway. Tarosh stared at the retreating figures. "Do we stop them, sir? They have no use to us now." "Stop them anyway, Dmitri." Proskov called for them to halt as Tarosh stood at his side, Makarov still gripped in one hand. When they failed to stop, Proskov turned to Tarosh. "Do I fire a warning shot, sir?" "No. They must be beyond pistol range at this point. I can fire your warning shot." They turned to see Belin, who stood beside them now, the 460 Weatherby back in his hands, face marbled with blood from the gash made from Tarosh's Makarov. "Go ahead," Tarosh said. Belin raised the rifle, took careful aim, and fired. The loud report kicked back at them from the nearby buildings. A hard smile came across Tarosh's face as the three distant figures stopped and turned around. "Very good, Vladimir." Now, Belin fired again. The second bullet took Jack in the middle of his chest, blowing a fist-sized hole out his back. Blood sprayed from his ruptured lungs and heart. He fell back slowly, crutch skidding in circles across the ice. Wolf barked in alarm. "Jack!" Kelly screamed. She tried to catch him as he fell. Troy pushed her down into the ice-covered runway. He then dropped to one knee and drew Zalman's Makarov from the pocket of his thermal suit, gripping it with both hands. Kelly looked up at him, goggles knocked off by her fall. "Troy, are you crazy? You can't hit them from here." He fired 4 times in rapid succession, squeezing off each shot smoothly, trying to hold the pistol's recoil. The first bullet passed close to Tarosh, who jumped back. The second and third cut by Belin. He steadied the 460 and sighted on Troy. The fourth bullet hit the back of Belin's right hand, shattering the metacarpal bones. He screamed as his hand blew apart. Fragments of bone flew up into his right eye. He dropped the Weatherby and bent over, cradling his ruined hand, screaming in pain. "Ow! Ow!" "Get the rifle, Dmitri," Tarosh said, as Proskov bent down to pick up the Weatherby still skidding across the ice. Belin shoved in front of him, grabbed for the rifle with his one good hand. "Let him have the weapon, Vladimir," Tarosh said. Belin pulled it away from Proskov, blood on his hands and face, a crazed look in his one undamaged eye. "I can still shoot!" Belin cried. "I can still kill!" He raised the rifle defiantly in his good hand, holding it above him like a spear, backing away from Proskov, blood dripping from his shattered right hand, swatting the runway ice. "Shoot him," Tarosh quietly said to Proskov. He nodded and drew his own Makarov. The sudden roar of the Tyrannosaur made them all look up. The beast stood over them like a malignant guardian spirit, hot breath pluming from its gaping, blood-stained jaws, massive chest heaving in and out, winded by the exertion of hunting men on the runway. The 3 men below it stood paralyzed at the sight. The Tyrannosaur watched them closely for several long, timeless seconds, then pounced on Balin with a quickness that defied perception. Balin, too terrified to scream, tried to fire the 460 like a pistol with his one good hand, but the rifle kicked out of his grip, and the shot went wild. The Tyrannosaur, enraged by the sight of the weapon, snapped viciously at it, missing the rifle as it clattered to the ice, but tearing off Balin's left arm at the shoulder. Now Balin began to scream, "Ah!" His voice turning hoarse in the Antarctic wind as blood sprayed from his shoulder across the iced-over runway. He tried to run, but fell after 2 stumbling steps, rolling over onto his back, where he lay twitching like a landed fish, blood splurting from his severed arm. He screamed again as the terrible jaws came down on him, then seized his body, head sticking out one side, legs the other, and lifted him high in the sky, where the Tyrannosaur began to gnaw on him fiercely, curved fangs impaling his body with the force of machine-driven spikes. Tarosh and Proskov ran from the carnage, Balin's blood and body parts splattering down behind them onto the ice. Further down the runway, Kelly seemed rooted to where she stood, unable to move or even turn her head from the violent spectacle of Balin's savage death. When she finally looked away, she saw Jack's body lying sprawled on the ice like something dropped and broken, blood pooling slowly beneath its sluggish contrast to the absolute stillness of the body itself. Wolf sniffed at the corpse and whimpered. Kelly reached down a hand towards it. "Come on, Kelly, there's nothing we can do for him now." "We can't just leave him here. T-Rex could come after us any moment, come on." As Tarosh and Proskov continued to flee down the ice-covered runway, the Tyrannosaur roared at them, hot breath billowing from its jaws, and gave chase. Proskov, who had grabbed the 460 after it slipped from Balin's grasp, raised the rifle, breaking his stride, and turned to fire on the Tyrannosaur. "No, Dmitri, but my colonel, he attacks." The Tyrannosaur roared again as it came after them, moving across the ice with quick, bird-like leaps at the speed that would have overtaken the 2 men within seconds, had there not been another explosion burst from the burning wreck of the LC-130 just then, shaking the runway with its reverberations. Clouds of flame rolled over the skeleton of the plane. The Tyrannosaur turned in that direction and gave out a curious roar, half startled, half triumphant. Tarosh slipped on the ice then, wrenching his leg. He cried out, "Ooh!" as he fell and grabbed the injured leg. "My colonel!" Proskov slung the 460 over his shoulder, then bent down and scooped Tarosh up in his arms and ran with him the rest of the way across the ice towards the nearest building of the central complex, while the Tyrannosaur continued to stare with pride and fascination at the burning LC-130. Proskov set Tarosh down inside the entrance to the building, closing the heavy weatherproof door behind them, glancing back at the great beast outside. Tarosh grabbed his arm. "The Gelyonite, Dmitri." "My, sir?" "The explosive we plan to use against him tonight in case the tranquilizer and the net fail to hold him. Sal Vendetti was the one in charge of setting it off. Vendetti is dead, my colonel, killed by the monster." "That doesn't matter. The Gelyonite was never detonated, and it must still be out there in the back complex. Go look for it, Dmitri. Find it, and bring it back here." "But my colonel, this would kill..." "Yes, Dmitri. It will probably destroy him. But you want..." "When some hope still remained of transporting him out, yes. At this point, I just want him stopped." "Da, my colonel." Proskov bowed stiffly and returned to leave. Tarosh struggled to his feet, massaging his injured leg, and looked through the narrow glass window in the door at the 2 distant figures and the dog walking away towards the mountains and the peninsula. "You think you can escape so easily, do you?" he said, as if speaking to himself. "You called, my colonel?" Proskov asked, pausing. "No, Dmitri. Get the Gelyonite. And hurry." Kelly turned around and looked back at the runway. "We're not gonna make it." "Oh, damn it, Kelly! Just because he stole your line earlier doesn't mean you have to steal his." "We're not gonna make it if you keep stopping, Kelly." I don't want to get shot in the back. They're not shooting anymore. They've got other things to worry about right now. The Tyrannosaur gave one last roar at the fiery The Tyrannosaur gave one last roar at the fiery wreck of the LC-130, then turned towards the central complex. In doing so, it seemed to pause, as if catching sight of Troy and Kelly, pale figures in the dim Antarctic twilight. It lowered its massive head and let out a roar that echoed down the runway towards them. "He sees us!" Kelly said. Great. There was nowhere to run, no place to hide. They stood separated from the Tyrannosaur by nothing more than a long ice-covered stretch of runway. The nearest building of the central complex lay hundreds of yards away, their access to it blocked by the beast. The creature roared again at them and moved forward, its great head lowered. Just then, Wolf began rushing down the runway towards the Tyrannosaur, filling the frozen night air with his loud, defiant bark. "Wolf!" Kelly called after him. "Come back!" But the mixed breed kept after the Tyrannosaur, which stopped to confront the four-legged mammal, running up to it. "Troy, call him back! He'll get killed!" Troy unstrapped his backpack and laid it down on the ice. "What are you doing?" she asked. He began unfastening. Damn it! He began unfastening the tie-downs that held the top flap, taking out something I brought with us just in case. "What?" A new roar echoed down the runway, sharper, more angry than before, underscored by Wolf's defiant barks. They both looked up in that direction. The Tyrannosaur opened its huge jaws and hissed at Wolf, then took a menacing step forward. Wolf stood his ground, barking at the huge beast above him. Kelly grabbed Troy's arm. The Tyrannosaur turned suddenly, all its attention shifting from the barking dog to the central complex. "What does he see?" Kelly asked. Troy took out his binoculars and adjusted the focus. The creature leaned down low as if snapping at something. "I hope they're not trying to shoot him with any more tranquilizers," Kelly said, "because another dose this soon, after the last one they knocked him out with, could..." She never got to finish. An explosion rocked the central complex, then made the crash of the LC-130 seem like a firecracker on the 4th of July. The pale Antarctic summer night flashed white, then orange, as the fireball burst and grew. Debris shot up in the air and rained down onto the runway ice, rattling faintly beneath extended reverberations from the blast. They were far enough back to avoid injury, but they could still feel the heat of the explosion pushing against them, displacing cold winds with warm. The Tyrannosaur flipped backwards up into the air and fell hard on the runway, shattering ice, rolling end over on several times before coming to a dead stop. "They killed him!" Kelly cried. "I doubt it. He's not that easy to kill." "They blew him up, those dirty bastards!" They tried to, but something went wrong. That explosion detonated too damn close to the central complex, maybe even right inside. I can't tell for sure. T-Rex probably caught some of the initial shockwave, but that's about it. Troy put away the binoculars and closed the backpack, then slipped it onto his shoulders again. She stared at him, suddenly curious. "What was it you were going to use against him?" "We don't need it now." "What was it, Troy?" "Let's worry about that when the time comes, okay?" Another explosion shook the complex, rumbling through the runway beneath them, buckling the ground, cracking the ice. Kelly shaded her eyes. "The whole place is on fire!" The Tyrannosaur suddenly scrambled back to its feet, where, swaying slightly, it let out a defiant roar. "See?" Troy said. "Good as new. Let's get out of here." "What about Wolf?" "I'm sure he's okay too." "How do you know? I can't see him anywhere." "We don't have time to wait for him, Kelly." She glanced back once more, the Tyrannosaur silhouetted against the inferno like a creature from another world. There was no sign of Wolf. She turned them and followed Troy into the night. When Proskov came back with the Gelianite, a timer fuse had already been attached to the Gelianite to the gelatinized nitroglycerin. This is a long fuse, he said, so we light it far from the monster There's no time for that, Tarosh interrupted. Set a short fuse, then throw it out as far as possible. Make sure it lands somewhere near him on the ice. But what, Dimitri? What if he sees the bomb and runs? He's not human, Dimitri. He is a primitive beast with an undersized, primitive brain. He can't understand anything. Proskov hesitated, then nodded. Duh, my colonel. Tarosh watched through the narrow glass window of the front door as Proskov stepped outside, the Gelianite in one hand. The door squeaked shut behind him in the cold night air. The Tyrannosaur turned in that direction, and catching sight of him, it let out a challenging roar. Proskov pitched the Gelianite underhand, dropping it a good 10 yards out on the ice-covered runway, where it skidded across the remaining distance, coming in to rest close to the Tyrannosaur. Timer fuse set for exactly 15 seconds. Proskov stepped back inside immediately and closed the door after him, watching with Tarosh through the narrow window. Move back from the glass, my colonel. The blast will... I'm aware of the concussive aftershock, Dimitri. Tarosh watched through the glass as the Tyrannosaur leaned down and sniffed at the Gelianite as if expecting it. He does not like it, Proskov said. There's nothing for him to like or dislike, Dimitri. He has no idea what it is. At that moment, the Tyrannosaur butted the Gelianite with its huge snout and sent it sliding across the ice like a curling stone back towards the central complex. Proskov's eyes grew wide behind the glass. Moisnian moi! He pulled Tarosh back from the door. The blast blew them back, both down the entryway and up against the corridor wall. Burning heat swept over them, along with clouds of choking, blinding smoke. When the smoke cleared somewhat, Proskov could see the whole world seemed on fire. Blood covered half of Tarosh's face, spilling from a deep gash in his head, made by a jagged piece of flying glass. My colonel! Proskov cried, unable to hear his own voice or any other sound in the deafness following the explosion. He lifted Tarosh up off the floor and carried him past dazed and wounded and dying men, all seeking shelter from the fury of the flames and the wrath of the Tyrannosaur. And that is the end of Chapter 17.